girlfriend caught cheating at her friend's wedding. So I, 31 years old male, met my girlfriend, 29 years old, 5 years ago after she left her abusive boyfriend and moved back in with her parents and her small child. She dropped out of college when he got her pregnant, her senior year, and he cheated and was physically abusive until she finally left him. We got introduced by one of her sorority sisters, Angie, who married a friend of mine, Dave. We connected and dated for a few months, and she and her son, Bobby, ended up moving in with me. The first few years were great. I got her to go back and finish her degree, and my dad got her a job where he works. About a year and a half ago, Karen reunited with some of her sorority sisters, and they started having a girls' night out every other Saturday. And she was also having drinks after work with some of her coworkers occasionally. And when I said something about it, she got defensive and we started arguing about it. Angie told her husband Dave that Karen was flirting a lot when they were out to the point. It started to bother her, and Dave gave me a heads up about it. So on one of their girls' night, I showed up at the bar and saw her flirting and letting a guy put his hands on her. I walked up and asked the guy to take his hand off my girlfriend and told Karen it was time to leave. It was an ugly drive home, and we fought, and she ended up sleeping on the couch. The next morning, she apologized and said had a little too much to drink and got carried away. I said that wasn't good enough, and if we were going to stay together, we were going to have to go to counseling together and work through this. Obviously, the girls' night out was over for a while, and we made progress, and things got better. 2 months ago, I could tell she was starting to act sketchy, being over paranoid with her phone and leaving the room when she would use it. I tried to talk with her, but she was just evasive and denied anything was wrong. I talked with Angie and Dave about my suspicions, and Angie finally said that Karen had been talking with an old boyfriend from college, and they had been flirting. When Angie called her out on it, Karen stated if she could keep both of them happy, and I didn't find out then. What was the harm? She said I was a great provider and great with Bobby, and she didn't want to lose that, but she needed more. Needless to say, that was devastating. But according to Angie, the old boyfriend lived in Houston, so there was no way they had anything physical, just long-distance flirting. One of Karen's sorority sisters asked her to be a bridesmaid at her wedding, and we made plans to go, but Bobby developed an ear condition and was supposed to have tubes installed and so he could fly there with us. And I volunteered to stay with him while she went. It was a 3-day event with rehearsal dinner, bachelorette party, shower, and the event day itself. After the rehearsal dinner, Dave called and said Karen's old boyfriend had showed up, and the two we hanging out and being very indiscreet. He sent me a couple of photos including a short video of them making out at the hotel. I called Karen's father and asked if he could watch Bobby, so I could drive down for the wedding, and I dropped Bobby off on the way out of town. It was a very long 6-hour drive, and I finally got there late that evening. I got to her room and could hear laughing inside, and I knocked on the door. After the third knock, Karen opened the door in her robe, and I walked in to find a guy naked in her bed. I introduced myself and advised him he should leave quickly. I turned and saw that Karen was undressed under the robe and asked her to explain herself. She got mad and then made excuses and then accusations. I finally said enough. I told her we were through. I said I was leaving, and if she decided to come back, she could get her things and get out of my life. As I walked back into the hall, there were a dozen or so people there, including Angie. We had never closed the door to the room, and as loud as we got, I'm sure we put on a pretty good show. I drove back and got home about the time the sun came up and crashed hard. The next morning, I started boxing up all her clothes. But when I came to her lingerie drawer with all the sexy stuff we had bought, I threw all that into a different box, along with her party and club wear, and sent it off to Goodwill. A couple of days later, when her flight got back, she called me from the airport, but her number was still blocked, so she had to Uber home. When she walked in, there were over a dozen boxes sitting in the living room with all of her and Bobby's stuff ready to go. I told her Bobby was at her parents' house, and she could call her dad and have him help haul the rest of her stuff to his house or wherever she planned on staying. She tried to talk her way out of it, but I wasn't listening to her stories. She tried to load her suitcases in the car, but her key fob wouldn't work. I told her both cars were in my name, and if she tried to take one of them, I would report it as stolen. Her dad finally showed up, and I gave him the short story on why we were breaking up. He didn't say a lot, but we shook hands before he left. All that was a week ago. Dave and Angie have cut contact with Karen. Evidently, our drama spilled over the next day at the ceremony and overshadowed the wedding. Karen reached out and we talked a couple of times, but I said there was no way back for us. Even so, she refuses to give up on us. Right now, I just have this hollow feeling inside. I eat, go to work, and come home and try to sleep. I'm not mad anymore, just numb. Maybe a little sad and confused on what to do next. Edit. For clarification, the guy at the wedding was not her ex Bobby's dad, just a guy she dated in college. She was actually in a very physically abusive relationship with Bobby's dad that included a couple of her visits. The last one, Angie, was the one that drove her to the hospital. So that was nor hearsay. The cheating, I have no proof, nor does Angie, just Karen's story. Update. We have been having some limited contact over getting all her things back and her name off a few of my accounts and policies. Of course, she is using that to try and make an argument to give her another chance. A and D really saved my butt, and I owe them. I had been holding a ring for the last year, waiting for things to be right, and popped the question. Bright side of that is I sold the ring for a little more than I paid for it the other day. My family has been there huge for me. My mom is so glad. I think she always knew it would end well. My dad hinted at the fact Karen's troubles weren't over. She has been a wreck since she got back and got a reprimand letter in her file the other day. He sees a pink slip in her future. I had a safety deposit box with some of her documents in it that I had forgotten about, along with a couple of investments she was tied to that had to be resolved. There were a few items that I agreed she could have that I didn't pack up originally. One of them being my old computer that Bobby played with and had some learning programs on. She was upset that I gave away some of her clothes. Most of her bedroom lingerie and her bodycon and party dresses that I had bought. I donated to charity. Update 2. I had an interesting dinner with Dave tonight and got some interesting details. The guy I caught Karen with had been invited to the wedding originally, but he left after our altercation and wasn't present for the wedding or reception. Karen was evidently inebriated at the ceremony and was less than graceful walking down the aisle. At the reception, she got sloppy drunk and got sick at the bridesmaids' table and was crying and upset the rest of the night. She was disinvited to the brunch the next morning, and almost all of her sorority sisters have blocked her. The scene in her room and in the hallway was common knowledge, and the talk of the reception. Dave said I should have stayed for the wedding as several people were asking about me. A user said, "What I really would like to know. Why on earth did you stay after all the suspicious behavior? And your friends telling you they knew you were being used. If she can keep the two of you happy. 2 months before the wedding fiasco. Didn't you realize you were being played, or did you not care? One thing not mentioned that you should be smacked upside the head for is moving her and her kid in after only 2 months of dating." The op replied. At the time, it was just long distance flirting, and there was no way anything physical could have happened. I confronted her, and she confessed and showed me a couple of the exchanges, and she agreed to block him and cut all contacts. I didn't mention the comment she made to Angie because I didn't want to throw her under the bus, plus lose Angie as a source of information. I did recheck her phone a couple of weeks later, and he was still blocked, and there were no other red flags. I thought I had a handle on things, but I was clearly 2 steps behind her, and she was better at hiding things than I was at finding them. It was so much better. She went on about how Karen embarrassed herself and how none of them wanted anything to do with her now. The rest of the dinner was about me and how I was feeling. What was I doing to get past this and move on? By dessert, it had moved to if I needed to talk, grab a drink, or maybe a movie to give her a call. I have rearranged all my rooms and threw out some decorative stuff and replaced it with something different. I also replaced most of the lighting with remote LEDs and added some colored backlighting, so the house has a different feel and look to it now. The next plan is to repaint Bobby's room and make a guest room out of it. I upgraded gyms and signed up for some personal training, and I have a cute trainer that I think is trying to kill me, just trying to fill my time, so I don't sit and think too much and fall back into the rabbit hole. Going out tonight to our favorite watering hole and hanging out with some friends. This story is over. What do you think about the story? What's your tips? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. And if you have any similar experiences or stories to share, we'd love to hear them. That's all for today's story. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit the like button, share it with your friends, and subscribe for more deep dives into the intriguing world of human experiences.